paper one's been and gone, but you need paper two to go even better. I've got a brand new condensed paper two for you to have a go at. Here's the thinking. Rather than write full responses for the paper as a whole, hone your technique and do one paragraph for 2, 3, 4, section B, and then compare that to mine. This will get you a higher mark. Stay tuned. You are in safe hands with Schofield on Shakespeare.
In this video, texts and questions for this new condensed paper will automatically appear at 5-second intervals. Press pause to read these through before writing your own paragraph. Given that the exam is so soon, I would suggest writing one paragraph only for each section so that you are consolidating technique and building up confidence. You'll need to toggle back to the extracts to answer the questions properly, but this will be easy to do knowing that each slide will be shown for 5 seconds. Remember that I will show you the mark scheme and my model paragraph after all questions and texts have been shown. If you prefer, you can email me at schofieldonshakespeare@gmail.com to obtain a PDF version of the inserts and the question paper. Either way, get reading, then answer question 1 and produce single paragraphs for 2, 3, 4 and section B. In the full exam, there'll be 4 marks at play for question 1. Here, given that it is a condensed paper, there are only 2 marks available. Do ensure that you follow the instructions. If it says give 1 phrase, don't give 2, and don't write a full sentence. If it says give a quotation, give a quotation. If it says explain, my interpretation is that this means use your own words. Now mark your own. I guess for 1A, you can also get the mark for including the phrase with sudden, wild abandonment after she wept at once. For question 2 of paper 2, this can be a useful structure. Is this what you used? In my model paragraph, I write, Mrs. Mallard feels incredibly tired following her outburst of grief after learning of her husband's death. She sinks in an armchair pressed down by a physical exhaustion that haunted her body. The past participle pressed down suggests that she feels an overwhelming weight bearing down upon her physically, whilst the verb haunted suggests that she feels unable to escape this strange, anxious tiredness. Structurally, however, the switch to the positive description outside the house, in particular the reference to the tops of trees being aquiver with the new spring life, foreshadows the later recognition in the passage that the death of her husband represents an opportunity for rejuvenating new experiences. How does this paragraph compare to yours? Are you similarly precise in your topic sentence in terms of immediately answering the question? Have you chosen an interesting quotation, which is an appropriate length? Have you been precise and technical when analysing this quotation, honing in on meaning and effect of individual words? And have you incorporated some structural analysis? Time now to make a judgment call on your response, which you will be better equipped to do having read my paragraph. To get into the top band, you need detailed insight into both language and structure. Give yourself a mark out of 6 now. The same structure is obviously useful for question 3 of paper 2. Here's my model paragraph. Maupassant suggests that Mademoiselle feels intensely dissatisfied with her life. The opening to this extract begins, "She was unhappy all the time, for she felt that she was intended for a life of refinement and luxury." The phrase "all the time" suggests how her unhappiness permeates all aspects of her existence. Additionally, the reason for this discontent is explained by her use of the passive tense in intended. She felt that her destiny in life had been to be rich and surrounded by the more sophisticated from a higher class, at ease with such wealth. Structurally, the second sentence in the extract emphasises this dissatisfaction. We already know that she hates her rundown apartment, but the initial main clause is followed by additional details at the end of the sentence. The peeling walls, the battered chairs, and the ugly curtains. This tricolon spells out exactly what it is about the apartment that Mademoiselle hates so much. It is the shabbiness and the lack of smart newness and polish which causes her to feel so depressed. You need to ask yourself the same questions as I did for question 2. Are you similarly precise in your topic sentence? Are you immediately answering the question? Is your quotation interesting? Is it an appropriate length? Have you been precise and technical when analysing this quotation, honing in on meaning and effect of additional words? And have you incorporated some structural analysis? And so make a judgment call on your response. You need to give yourself a mark out of 12. Of course, you've only written one paragraph, but the assumption will be that the rest of your 2 sides is of the same quality. Press pause now.
You need to probe the statement for question 4. Need to weigh it up to get a lovely score. Compare the text frequently. Compare the text frequently and back up your points with an embedded quote.
Well, that clears that up. Let's go straight to my introduction and the first main paragraph. Text 1 recounts Mrs. Mallard's feelings as she learns about her husband's death. These seem to shift from initial unhappiness to a degree of excitement and hope. In a very different way, text 2 describes Mademoiselle's feelings of dissatisfaction about her life, something she feels indignant about. Both women seem unhappy initially, but Mademoiselle's unhappiness seems far more deep-rooted and toxic. Text 1 suggests that Mrs. Mallard initially feels unhappy after finding out about her husband's death. The reader learns that she wept at once with sudden wild abandonment in her sister's arms. This suggests that she feels passionately overwhelmed by grief, so much so that she needs her sister's physical support. This certainly seems unhappy, although not particularly frustrated. Whereas Mrs. Mallard has a trigger for her initial unhappiness, the death of her husband. Mademoiselle is far more broadly unhappy with her life as a whole. She was unhappy all the time, for she felt that she was intended for a life of refinement and luxury. This states explicitly the permanence of her unhappiness, with the reason given. She feels strongly that she should have been given a rich, sophisticated life, and thus feels deeply frustrated with its shabby ordinariness. Notably, the rundown nature of her apartment with old chairs and walls in need of being repainted was torture to her and made her very angry. The noun torture suggests that she feels enormous mental pain at the ugly drabness of her surroundings, feelings that Mrs. Mallard doesn't share as she reflects in her comfortable roomy armchair, suggesting deep unhappiness and frustration. Overall, both texts show some unhappiness, but ironically, given the lack of an explicit tragedy, Mademoiselle seems far unhappier due to her burning frustration with her life and surroundings. The tricky thing with this question is convincing the examiner that your comparisons are interwoven, but also that your evaluation is sustained and critical. With 12 marks for evaluation and 6 for comparison, I tend to prioritise the former. Post quotation, return to the statement and argue the extent to which, in this case, the texts powerfully show unhappy, frustrated women. Notice how I have far more comparisons in the second half of the paragraph, having gone into detail about the statement in relation to the first text. Note also how specific these comparisons are. I'm also becoming increasingly keen on the idea of a very brief comparison halfway through the evaluation of the second text, a cheeky unlike, or here, a feeling that Mrs. Mallard doesn't share. Hopefully you're now in a position to give yourself a mark out of 12 for evaluation, focus on question and use of supporting quotations, and 6 for comparison. Press pause to do this. Section B is the part of the paper in which you show off your flair and how accurately and engagingly you can write. In previous videos, I've suggested that you may partly memorise and adapt some of your response and or ensure that you have used all of the features within this checklist. Here's my opening paragraphs to question 6. Write about a time you experienced something frustrating. There are times in life when we leap out of bed like demented kangaroos, propelled by the most wonderful energy, desperate to take on the challenges of the new day. There are times in life when we feel unstoppable. New hope and vitality course through our veins, turbocharging our souls and leaving us shouting out to the world, bring it on. And then there are moments when we feel rather differently, for life can be frustrating at times. Rather than launch straight into my tale of woe, I reference the opposite. I talk about moments of wonderful energy. Why? I want to manipulate my reader for effect. I want to fool them that this piece is going to be a life-affirming positive number, when actually it is going to answer the question and talk about frustration. And so, play with your reader. Manipulate them. Was your paragraph equally interesting and sophisticated? Time now to give yourself a mark out of 24 and a second mark out of 16. I appreciate this is hard, particularly given that there are 40 marks at play and that in the actual exam you will be writing at least 2.5 sides. Nonetheless, the process is worth doing, albeit briefly. The second part of the mark scheme will appear in 5 seconds' time.
This has been a Schofield on Shakespeare production, helping you get the highest marks for Paper 2 OCR GCSE English Language. Best of luck.